The next thing we're going to look at is the NP engine facilities, which are just north along the river from where those businesses are. So you got depot over there somewhere, these businesses right here, and then you've got the Y to turn the engines and the engine facilities themselves. So if we look here, you can see that you've got what they call a tail track on the Y that stopped right here. It used to serve one business. They delivered some coal and things over here, but by the 50s, that was all decommissioned, and they'd taken the tracks out of the street, and the tracks stopped right there. Just enough space to turn an engine around. Okay, so let's take a look here at the map, and then we'll show you. So a lot of the photos of this area are taken here looking north. So the first thing you see is a coal conveyor that this track was inclined. They would bring cars up here, and they used something called a Red Devil to unload them, and then they would load the tenders in a semi-automated way. This is the water tower. This is the pump house, and then you've got the Hewitt Avenue trestle here. And then kind of right underneath is the sand house after 1954, I think. Prior to that, it lived over here. And you've got the main engine house, which is a long rectangular building. It was rebuilt in 47 on the same site, about the same size. You've got the machine shop and locker rooms and things. And then this is what's called the RIP shed, repair in place. So they would do light car maintenance here when like an axle bearing failed or something. They could repair the car in Everett. And then various other buildings, like the place they stored oil and gasoline away from all the other buildings. You've got a blacksmith shop here, and you've got a small parking area and a kind of an executive garage there. Supplies there, and you've got the section house, which really wasn't technically related to the engine facilities, because the section house would be every so many miles on the track, and that's where the section crew operated. They kept the track maintained, but it just so happened in Everett it was near the engine facility. And you've got the Carman shack. So the guys that worked in this shed, they had their own shack. And then this wheel track, they could store trucks and wheels and things for cars there. It wasn't connected to the rest of the track. All right, so let's go back to the photos. This is another section taken out of one of those aerial photos. But you can see here, that's the depot, bending, going up the river. These are some of those businesses we were just looking at. Here you've got Highway 2 going across. And you've got MP yard tracks here. Water tower, coaling facilities in here. See if we can get in a little bit. Yeah, you can see the Red Devil, the conveyor, gondola into the conveyor, up and then dumping into the tender like that. And you've got the engine house, rip shed, Carmen's shanty, section house, machine shop, oil house, garage, blacksmith shop there. And you can see the tail track on the Y going out of the picture, and that's where it stopped right there, just enough to get the engine turned around. All right, so as I mentioned, here's looking north to the water tower. They're basically parked at the coal conveyor at this point. You can see the engine house and the machine shop and the rip shed there. Here's another one, water tower. There's that 1123 again. There's the sand house in the new location. Very interesting. Everett was one of the few places on the NP where they had a water spout on both sides. These were the servicing tracks for the local trains, and so it was a different job run by engine hostlers, and they weren't allowed to run on main track without special privilege. And I think maybe they had to have a pilot engineer with them if they were out there. So these were like their toy tracks they ran back and forth on. So there was clearly a water spout for them to service the local engines. But then any of the road engines that came in could get their servicing on this side without having to mix the two and get them in each other's way. And here you've got 1123 with some of those coal gondolas taking on a load of coal. Again, George Simonson is to be thanked for these photos. Here you've got in a flood. This one came from Bob Harriman. So, oops, this is the sand house in its earlier location, closer to the engine house. That's it right there. But you can see this is a road engine here, and this is one of the switchers inside. And speaking of road engines, this is the 1683. This is another one of those Mikes, the 282 wheel arrangement. This is the Class W1. This would have been getting ready to go to Darrington, probably getting sand. Everybody knows what sand was used for on a steam locomotive and a diesel as well, as to, if the wheels started to slip, you could sand the rails in front of the wheels and help them get traction. And on a steam locomotive, they'd also shoot some sand into the flues to get clear them out a little bit. Yeah, so there you can see, I can actually see the sand in the sand house there. and there's a worker of some kind getting ready to do something. Jack, did we decide we knew what this was? Are these air hoses over here? Looks like they are on this post. I think so.
For the tires.
Yeah, for the tires. That's right. Funny enough, steam locomotives do have tires, but they are steel bands that wear down and they put new ones on. Here's looking more directly north into the engine house, the coaling facility, and the original Highway 2 trestles at our backs. You can tell this is after I-5 was built about 1970 because the new on-ramp, off-ramp, the westbound off-ramp is there for I-5 to Highway 2. You can see some of those FTs and a Jeep 9 there. Okay, let's go forward. This is a close-up of the machine shop where some of the workers in this area had locker rooms and storage and things like that in here.
It was also the roundhouse foreman's office.
Right, yeah, that's right.
The lady who was the crew caller and the woman of all work, Beatrice Peterson.
Bob Harriman talked about her a lot. He used to tease her.
She had a register room there.
Oh, is that where the register was?
Oh yeah, for the crews.
Oh, okay, it wasn't in the depot then, it was here.
Engineman only, yeah.
Engineman only, okay. And this is, I think, the blacksmith shop here. But the crew caller, that was a job where, this is before cell phones, right, and pagers. You had somebody that would make phone calls to the crew, reminding them they were due in on a certain time, and if they couldn't get an answer, they would usually have a roundhouse young man or something, and they would send him to somebody's door to pound on it. That was one of your first jobs down in Auburn, wasn't it? Going and waking up crews?
Yeah, I was a crew caller for a while now.
Yeah.
I did everything. I started at 16.
Yeah.
They'd already scraped the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
My dad was a machinist, so I got a job as a laborer.
Yeah, you had to be clever about where people might be staying, right? Because some of them had wives and some of them had not wives, right? You had to track them down sometimes.
And the taverns.
And the taverns, right.
They take them dancing at the castle.
The NP has a proud record of the engine crews being mostly sober most of the time. Here's a close-up kind of the rip shed and you can see in the many years of steam locomotive service, you get lots of smoke. This is a really cool photo George took looking out of the building. I mean, who does this, right? It's a wonderful shot. But you can see the servicing pit here, so they get underneath the locomotives. This is looking south. This is a close-up of the rip shed. Just enough to keep the rain from beating these guys up, but working on a railroad car in the middle of winter was still pretty miserable. It was pretty cold out there. Here's a couple of locomotives poking out, one facing forward, one facing rear. Here's another one, and this is that thing with the hoses on it again. I'm assuming it was compressed air, probably for cleaning out things. And here a little bit later, you've got the track of the Y passing in front here, going over here across the street. You've got one of these diesels with the bell, steam locomotive there. So this was in the transition period between 53 and 57. Wintertime. A little bit later, almost the same spot, just, the motive powers changed dramatically. This is June of 1966. Very similar to the FTs we saw earlier, just kept improving them and they had more power. This is the 4 Aces. Here's another shot of it earlier. This is the blacksmith shop that was just north there of the machine shop and the engine house. And this is the Carmen Shanty just north of the rip shed. And this is the oil house, which is where all the flammables were stored. And that's it for this segment.